Ah, there you are now. Welcome back to the workshop. You got me working. Alright, so today's little project that I brought you along with is an internally mounted selector box or a selector mechanism. So if you remember back to Sunday's video, or if you watched Sunday's video, if you didn't, it'll be a link there in the corner now. We were working on a race car with a red roof. The customer complained that the gear selector wasn't very nice. He said it was vague feeling, and when we took the gearbox apart from the car later on, we definitely seen symptoms of a poorly selecting gears in second and first, which would be common if the gear selector is moving around a lot. So I liberated earlier on today from the car the actual rod change unit. So for anyone who's not familiar with these rod change units, I'll just give you a quick run through how they work. So the gear lever here moves forward, backwards, left and right. And that mechanism is translated through the gear selector change box here, which then gives you a push-pull motion here, and that affects change of gears in the gearbox. So when I stripped this, I found a couple of broken parts. So we have this here, which is called the yoke. And the yoke is an important part of the gear selector mechanism because it is where the gear lever mounts into. So the gear lever mounts in and it gives you forward, backwards, left and right movements. And as you can see, the yoke is broken. It's a broken yoke. Now this didn't break with me taking it apart. It was sitting in the selector housing in bits. So the front part was working, so it was still selecting gears, but the back half wasn't stabilizing it, so it was bending around inside the housing. Now originally I had planned to modify this selector housing for this job, but when I took a look at it, unfortunately there's terrible wear in it and it's really cruddy and not a nice piece of kit. So I went hunting through my own collection of bits and pieces and found a really nice clean one. So this is a little bit along the way. So this particular modification, I have to be absolutely honest, is inspired by a friend on Instagram called Arnold. He works over in Kent Auto Developments in the UK. And a couple of months back, he put up a picture on his Instagram of a modified selector housing, something like this. And it got the creative juices flowing in my brain. And I've been looking for a project to try this out on myself. And this car came around and I think it was the perfect time to do it. So I'm just going to run you through where I've gotten to so far. So I have modified it quite significantly from the original one by cutting off the back of this housing here and cutting off the excess material on the front of the housing here. You'll also notice these bosses here and here. I welded those on, so I put some bar stock in the lathe, drilled, tapped, threaded, and then parted it off, and then I welded those bosses onto the housing here and here. I then set the whole housing, after welding it, I might add, into the lathe. What I did in the lathe was I cut this end of the housing in the chuck, and I put a ground stock pin in this end to center the housing up in the lathe. I then turned a concentric feature here on the back of the selector housing, which allowed me then to hold the housing with my live center. Then I was able to line bore the housing, and then after that I turned up a bronze bushing here for the front, which I'll give you a little look at now. So you can see we have a nice good quality bronze bushing which is pressed into the housing, and the shaft fits into it really nicely now, so you'll get really smooth action on this gear selector. Don't worry, you haven't missed all that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to flick you on now to see all that happening in a bit of time lapse, and then when you're done watching that, you can pop back here to me and we'll be set up in the lathe to turn the bronze bushing for the back of this housing. Enjoy. Okay, so the next feature we have to turn is a bronze bushing this side. So we have the bronze bushing this side, we need to turn the bronze bushing for this side. So there's a couple of critical dimensions we need to get. You can see there's two features in there. There's a big diameter and then a smaller diameter. I know the smaller diameter is 5/8 of an inch because I bored it 5/8 of an inch, which is 16.18 millimeters or thereabouts. It's a drill bit, so it isn't particularly very accurate. So what we'll do is we'll turn that feature on the bronze down to say 16.25 to get a press fit in there. Then the next is this. We need to give some relief for this outer housing here and then a stop to come up against there. So let's turn those features on this bit of bronze. Then we can bore through the center of the bronze and we can ream it out to size for the selector shaft to run in. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is relief here for this dimension. This outer dimension here in here is not concentric with the center. You can probably just about see that. So I just want some relief there to let the bushing go in past it. So we need to go just another small little bit here on the front feature, which is why I wanted to get that back feature done so I know how much more to go here. So we're within a couple of tenths now of right dimension. Always when I get close, I really do like to just test fit to check my tolerances. Especially with aluminium castings like this and bronze interference fits. This bronze bushing just needs a tiny, tiny little interference to fit right. As they say, it's much easier to remove material than it is to put it back on. Okay, let's just try our pin in there. Ah, perfect. Okay, that's what we want. Okay, so that is the back bronze bushing done. Let's fit it into the gear selector and assemble it. Okay, there we are now, all finished and done. So there's that bronze bushing that we made in the lathe, and you can see I've pressed it into the housing now, and I've also assembled that yoke so that it's working. So you can see we have a lovely, smooth, neat action on the gear lever. That's exactly what we want for a race car. We want the gear lever to be positive, have a smooth, tight action, and then it will engage gears much better. Next job to do on this is to make some brackets to go off these bosses I made here to come down and to mount this on the tunnel inside the car as opposed to where it was originally outside the car. I'll make sure on the next HRE Uncut to show you this mounted in the car and working so that you can see how this works and maybe get a concept of what it is that we're at. Don't forget, if you like the video, to share and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.